In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, yet in the shadow of constant battle exists a system of punishment more relentless than any battlefield, the prisons of the Imperium. These are not simple holding cells where the guilty wait for trial. No, these are monumental constructs of iron, stone, and psychic oppression, built to break the spirit as surely as they shatter the body. From the outside, a prison world might appear as a fortress, a bulwark against crime and heresy, but a closer look reveals a nightmare engineered with meticulous cruelty. Every corridor, every chamber, every cage serves a single purpose: control, suffering, and fear. The walls themselves seem alive, whispering threats to those who cross their threshold, infused with the psychic presence of long-dead inquisitors, vengeful spirits, and warp-touched wards designed to keep prisoners in constant terror. The air in these prisons is thick with the mingled stench of sweat, decay, and chemical disinfectants, a toxic blend that assaults the senses from the moment one steps within. Echoing through the endless hallways are the cries of the damned, the wails of those broken by torture, the gasps of prisoners forced into labor beyond human limits, the low, desperate whispers of those plotting escape or rebellion in the shadows. Inmates are stripped of identity, reduced to numbers stamped onto their flesh, and forced to wear the uniform of degradation: rough tunics, metal shackles, and collars that can deliver shock or pain at the whim of the guards. Names are forbidden. Memories of life before the prison are punished if recalled too loudly. In the eyes of the Imperium, the individual is nothing. Obedience and survival are all that remain. The guards are often barely more than instruments of the prison itself, their humanity eroded by years of enforcing cruelty without question. Some are recruited from the penal ranks themselves, survivors of the very prisons they now control, hardened into merciless overseers who understand that fear is more effective than loyalty. Others are Adeptus Arbites or members of the local planetary enforcers, trained in the brutal arts of law and punishment. They patrol with inhuman precision, their footsteps echoing in perfect rhythm, their eyes ever watchful for the slightest defiance. They carry whips, electro-bolters, and devices of pain designed for efficiency, not spectacle, though some enjoy the display of suffering regardless. Even a fleeting expression of defiance or fear can mark a prisoner for special attention. No action goes unnoticed, no whisper is safe. The slightest misstep can lead to punishment so severe that the memory itself lingers like a phantom, haunting every future decision. Within these labyrinthine prisons, every corner conceals danger. Cells are stacked in towers, their windows mere slits through which dim light barely penetrates. Torture chambers lie hidden behind heavy doors, their keys controlled by those who wield absolute authority over life and death. Punishments are designed not merely to inflict pain, but to strip the individual of hope. A limb may be severed, memories may be erased, prisoners may be subjected to psychic torment that leaves them screaming silently in their own minds. Isolation is a tool as potent as any iron restraint, designed to twist the perception of time and reality. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months, until a prisoner can no longer distinguish between waking and dreaming, between friend and foe, between themselves and the Emperor's inexorable will. Despite this, life persists in grim, tenuous forms. Prisoners develop hierarchies of their own, a fragile ecosystem of fear, loyalty, and opportunism. Some form alliances for protection, trading scraps of food or information in exchange for survival. Others use cunning and deception, playing guards against one another, or manipulating fellow inmates for advantage. Even within these ranks, betrayal is common. Trust is the most dangerous commodity of all. Prisoners whisper of the warden, a figure shrouded in mystery, said to patrol unseen, delivering punishment with a personal touch that defies reason. Those who speak of him are careful, for invoking his name is as dangerous as invoking the Emperor's wrath directly. To anger the warden is to invite horrors beyond the comprehension of ordinary mortals. Flesh twisted, minds shattered, souls tested against the cold steel of the Imperium's judgment. The labor assigned to prisoners is ceaseless and brutal. Mining operations extend into deep planetary crusts. Factories churn day and night, producing the weapons of war that feed the Imperium's endless conflicts, and construction crews toil on massive fortifications meant to withstand siege and bombardment alike. The work is not meant to educate, rehabilitate, or even punish in any conventional sense. It is meant to drain every ounce of life and willpower. Disease is rampant, food is scarce, and the very air sometimes carries spores that can paralyze, hallucinate, or kill. survival depends on adaptability, on cunning, and on the ability to read the intentions of both guards and fellow prisoners. Simple mistakes, hesitation to act can result in sudden death, sometimes public, sometimes secretive, always terrifying. For those accused of heresy or contact with the warp, the punishments are more sinister still. Isolation chambers imbued with psychic inhibitors and amplifiers trap the mind in cycles of fear and hallucination. Shadows move where none exist. Whispers penetrate thoughts, and the boundary between reality and nightmare dissolves. In some prisons, experimental devices strip away personality, leaving husks that can be used for labor, gladiatorial combat, or other darker purposes. Heretics may be offered redemption through service, yet this is rarely a path to salvation. It is merely a temporary reprieve from the machinery of suffering, a reprieve measured in hours, days, or weeks. Amid this darkness, there are stories of hope, though they are few and fragile. Some prisoners preserve fragments of knowledge, smuggled books, forbidden texts, or whispered teachings passed down in secrecy. These acts of rebellion, intellectual or spiritual, are dangerous but offer a flicker of identity and humanity. Others find kinship among the damned, sharing warmth, food, or protection, small resistances against a system designed to crush the spirit entirely. Even these alliances are fraught with peril. One act of kindness can be twisted into betrayal. One secret shared can bring devastation. Yet, the mere act of remembering what it means to be human becomes a quiet defiance, a statement that even within the Imperium's cruelest prisons, life, no matter how battered, can persist. Punishments in these prisons are both ritualistic and arbitrary, a mix of religious ceremony and calculated cruelty. The chaplains visit not merely to oversee moral or spiritual compliance, but to instill terror. Their sermons, delivered in booming voices, recount tales of those who failed the emperor and suffered unimaginable fates. The Inquisition monitors for whispers of heresy, rooting out those who might challenge the Imperium's authority, and any prisoner marked by suspicion becomes subject to methods that defy comprehension. Electrodes, toxins, psychic amplifiers, and mechanical restraints are all used not merely for interrogation, but for demonstration, a warning to all who might defy the unyielding law of the Imperium. Death is ever present, a constant companion to those inside. Some die from exhaustion, others from disease, still others from the hand of the guards or the machinery of punishment. Funerals are perfunctory or non-existent. The dead are often fed to the machines, incinerated, or used as warning to others. Even life is a form of torture, measured in cycles of fear, labor, and humiliation. Yet, prisoners endure, driven by instinct, by cunning, by the faint hope of survival, or perhaps by the more primal urge to see another day, even if that day is no less filled with horror than the last. Amid all this, rumors swirl through the prison. Tales of secret tunnels, hidden caches of food, forbidden rituals that grant temporary escape from pain, and of the warden's shadowy manipulations. Some are true, many are fabrications, but all are whispered with a mixture of fear and hope. For prisoners, these stories are currency, a lifeline, a way to keep the mind engaged when the body is reduced to mere function. To speak of the impossible is a rebellion in itself, a small victory against the crushing weight of the Imperium's machinery. By the time one has survived the first months of incarceration, the transformation is profound. Bodies bear the marks of abuse and labor. Minds have learned the subtleties of fear, trust, and manipulation. Few retain the innocence or morality they once possessed. For most, the prison becomes a crucible, forging survival instincts sharper than any weapon, even as the individual's humanity is eroded. Some emerge hardened, cunning, and ruthless. Others simply break shadows of what they once were, yet even in breaking, they serve the Imperium's purpose: obedience, labor, and warning to others. These prisons, in all their enormity, are a microcosm of the Imperium itself, merciless, hierarchical, and unforgiving. They embody the principle that weakness is intolerable, dissent is annihilated, and survival depends on skill, cunning, and perhaps the faintest spark of hope. To step inside is to confront the ultimate expression of Grimdark reality, the constant struggle between life and death, obedience and rebellion, despair and the fragile, flickering possibility of hope. Here, in these iron cages, the human spirit is tested as never before, measured not by ideals or morality, but by the ability to endure, adapt, and survive in a universe that tolerates nothing but absolute obedience. In the shadowed depths of the Imperium's prison worlds, the word discipline is a hollow pretense for cruelty. Here, punishment is elevated to a precise art form, meticulously designed to strip the mind, body, and soul of all resistance. Prisoners learn quickly that obedience is not encouraged, it is demanded, and failure to comply is met with consequences that twist pain into a ritual of terror. The cells themselves are engineered to amplify suffering. Cold, damp walls absorb every scream and reflection, echoing it back in distorted forms that drive inmates to the brink of madness. Shackles are often fitted with devices that can snap bones silently or deliver shockwaves calibrated to exacting voltages. Some restraints are psychic in nature, designed to interface with the prisoner's mind and create hallucinations so vivid that reality and nightmare are indistinguishable. No one is spared. Even the strongest, most cunning prisoners can find themselves succumbing to the weight of relentless torment. The prison authorities maintain control through a combination of fear, indoctrination, and spectacle. Guards wield not just weapons but psychological dominance, trained to exploit weaknesses and provoke submission. Every glance, every twitch, every whispered word can be interpreted as defiance. Punishment is never uniform, it is tailored, intimate, and often creative in its brutality. Some prisoners are sent to isolation cells where they exist in near complete sensory deprivation. Hours bleed into days, days into weeks, until the mind begins to fabricate voices, shadows, and visions, making prisoners question whether they have ever been awake. Others face the devices of the inquisitors, intricate machines of torture, some mechanical, others infused with psychic energy, designed to break both body and will. Confessions extracted here are often meaningless. The real objective is the complete subjugation of the soul. The most feared figures within these prisons are the chaplains and inquisitors who visit regularly. Their presence a reminder that the Emperor's eye watches, even where human vision cannot penetrate. They deliver sermons that are as much threats as spiritual guidance. Some prisoners are offered redemption through service and assignment to hazardous labor in mining, manufacturing, or gladiatorial combat, but these reprieves are temporary, dangerous, and always conditional. Failure, even a minor infraction, can result in sudden execution or a punishment so extreme that it lingers in memory as a constant, silent terror. The mere rumor of a new form of torture circulating among the wards is enough to incite panic. Survival demands constant vigilance. There is no rest, no comfort, no escape from the constant scrutiny of the Imperium's enforcers. Among prisoners, a fragile social order emerges, one governed by power, cunning, and alliances formed in desperation. Gangs of hardened criminals control sections of the prison, their authority maintained through intimidation, force, and the occasional brutal demonstration of loyalty. Some prisoners leverage intelligence, manipulation, and guile to secure small advantages, trading information, protection, or contraband to survive. Even the smallest act of kindness is calculated and potentially dangerous, for trust is the most precarious of currencies in this environment. Whispered warnings circulate about the warden, a shadowy figure said to preside over the most feared sections of the prison. Few have seen him, but the consequences of invoking his name or crossing his invisible authority are legendary. Stories of punishment spread rapidly, serving as both terror and education to those who might underestimate the subtlety of the system. Life among the prisoners is a constant negotiation between self-preservation and morality. Food is meager and often contaminated. Illness spreads like wildfire through overcrowded cells, claiming lives silently and indiscriminately. Prisoners learn to ration, hoard, and share in calculated ways, forming alliances that can mean the difference between life and death. Labor is relentless. Mining shafts plunge into the heart of dead worlds, where the air is poisoned and the risk of collapse constant. Factories run around the clock, producing weapons that will be used in the galaxy's endless wars. Even the deadliest chemical or environmental hazards are considered mere tools to weed out the weak, a harsh but efficient method of maintaining a hierarchy of strength. Some prisoners become hardened by this environment, developing resistance to disease, pain, and psychological manipulation, but few emerge without scars, both visible and invisible. Torture is not merely physical, it is psychological, ritualistic, and systematic. In some prisons, psychic amplifiers create a state of constant anxiety, magnifying fear into hallucinations so vivid they leave prisoners screaming silently in their cells. Isolation and deprivation are tools used to erode identity, turning humans into obedient shells. Prisoners accused of heresy endure specialized chambers where tainted energies gnaw at their minds, warping thoughts, perceptions, and memories. In these chambers, even the concept of reality is distorted. Shadows move where none exist, whispers penetrate the consciousness, and visions of the Emperor's wrath become so vivid that escape into fantasy is indistinguishable from life. Some prisoners succumb to madness, others endure, and a few manipulate the torment to their own ends, though these are the rare exceptions. Amid the despair, some flickers of hope persist. Knowledge is preserved in secret fragments of ancient texts, hidden libraries, forbidden teachings whispered between trusted inmates. These small acts of intellectual defiance become lifelines, reminders that there is a world beyond the prison walls, that the mind can remain free even when the body is imprisoned. Such pursuits are dangerous, often punishable by death or worse, but the human instinct for survival includes a hunger for meaning. Even in a system designed to crush individuality, prisoners find ways to assert it, whether through subtle rebellion, coded messages, or hidden rituals. The impermanence of life in these prisons is a constant pressure. Death is everywhere, immediate and often random. Some die from labor accidents, others from disease or exposure to toxins, and many from the deliberate cruelty of the guards. Public executions are common, serving as both punishment and warning to others, a spectacle of the Imperium's absolute authority. The dead are rarely mourned. Their bodies are consumed by machines, incinerated, or left as warnings to others. Survival is measured not by morality or courage, but by cunning endurance, and an almost instinctual ability to navigate the treacherous hierarchy of cruelty that governs these prisons. Rumors circulate constantly among inmates, half-truths and legends about hidden tunnels, secret caches of supplies, or forbidden rituals capable of granting temporary relief from torment. Some are credible, the results of careful observation and intelligence, others are fabrications designed to manipulate or distract. Yet all are essential to survival. In the darkness of the cells, these whispered tales provide hope, a mental escape, and a means to maintain sanity in an environment designed to strip it away. To think, to plan, to hope, even in small ways, is rebellion, a quiet defiance against the machinery of the Imperium. Punishments escalate for repeated infractions or perceived defiance. Electrodes, chemical injections, psychic amplifiers, and mechanical restraints are used not just for extraction of confessions, but as demonstrations of the prison authorities' power. Chaplains may oversee public penances, turning agony into ritual. Inquisitors may personally interrogate high-value prisoners, their methods legendary for a precision that makes physical suffering almost secondary to psychological devastation. Those who survive these ordeals are irrevocably changed. They emerge more careful, more observant, and far more ruthless. Few remain untouched in body or mind. Yet the prisons of the Imperium are not without their subtle cruelties. Even survival carries its own weight. Every act, every thought, every fleeting impulse is measured against the brutal standards imposed by guards' authorities and the ever-watchful eyes of the warden. Small victories, such as finding additional rations, avoiding punishment, or manipulating an adversary, are precious and rare. They are a testament to resilience, cunning, and the ability to endure in an environment designed for failure. Such victories are fleeting. The momentary reprieve can vanish with the opening of a cell door, the shift of a guard, or the arrival of a new prisoner. In the end, discipline within these prisons is less about correcting behavior than it is about dominance. It is a system designed to mold obedience from fear, strength from suffering, and loyalty from terror. The human mind is tested beyond endurance, shaped by rituals that blur morality and survival, identity and utility. The prisoner learns that resistance may be futile, but cunning can preserve life. Observation, calculation, and the ability to exploit even the smallest error of guards or fellow prisoners become critical survival tools. Every prisoner becomes an expert in the psychology of fear, the dynamics of dominance, and the mechanics of pain. In this crucible, endurance is measured not in days or years, but in moments survived without surrendering entirely to despair. And yet, despite the omnipresent cruelty, some find meaning within the darkness. Secret libraries, whispered lessons, and small acts of camaraderie persist as fragile threads of hope. These acts are dangerous, often punishable by death, yet they serve as a reminder that humanity is not entirely extinguished. They are a rebellion of the mind, a refusal to allow the Imperium's punishment to annihilate the self entirely. The human spirit, even battered and fractured, finds ways to persist, to learn, to adapt. In these moments, the prisoners assert control over the one thing the Imperium cannot take thought. Life among the damned in the prisons of the Imperium is a study in survival, cruelty, and the fragile hierarchies that emerge from necessity. These prisons, sprawling constructs of stone, iron, and psychic wards, are not merely holding facilities, they are microcosms of the Imperium itself, brutal societies governed by fear, power, and the unrelenting desire to dominate or survive. Within their walls, prisoners learn quickly that every interaction carries potential danger. A glance, a whispered conversation, or a fleeting gesture can be interpreted as loyalty, betrayal, or defiance, and each interpretation carries consequences ranging from beatings to death. For the inexperienced, life is a daily exercise in terror. For the hardened, it is a continuous game of manipulation, observation, and opportunism. Trust is the rarest of currencies, more valuable than gold and more dangerous than poison. The social structure of the prison is both rigid and fluid. Some wings are dominated by gangs of hardened criminals, warriors, and former soldiers who assert control through fear, strength, and intimidation. Their power is maintained through displays of brutality, public executions of those who defy them, punishments for minor infractions designed to remind others of the cost of weakness, and the occasional selective act of mercy that ensures loyalty. These ruling factions are not infallible, alliances shift constantly, betrayals are common, and the balance of power can change in a single, violent night. Yet even in these chaotic hierarchies, survival requires understanding the subtle rules that govern behavior. Those who fail to adapt quickly are consumed by the very system they inhabit. Outside the dominion of gangs, prisoners navigate the invisible labyrinth of loyalty and suspicion. Small acts of intelligence, cunning, or manipulation can provide protection. A carefully timed lie, the concealment of a small resource, or the strategic placement of information can save a life, or end one. Knowledge is a weapon, often more powerful than brute force. Prisoners share information sparingly, always weighing the risk of betrayal against the benefit of alliance. Rumors, half-truths, and secret codes circulate through the prison, acting as both currency and defense mechanism. The most skilled individuals manipulate these flows, subtly directing attention away from themselves, setting traps for the unwary, or using the fears of others to their advantage. Even a simple misstep, a misheard command, a glance at the wrong person, or an innocent question can set off a chain reaction of violence, punishment, and death. The environment itself is a constant, silent enemy. Cells are overcrowded, dimly lit, and often contaminated with disease. Ventilation is poor, and the air is thick with decay, chemicals, and the stench of human suffering. Food is scarce, rationed, and frequently spoiled, forcing prisoners to scavenge or steal to survive. Contamination spreads quickly, and those unable to resist illness are left to die or are culled by guards to prevent epidemics. Labor is endless and deadly. Prisoners toil in mines that extend into the molten cores of planets, factories that operate 24 hours a day, producing the weapons of war that fuel the Imperium, and construction sites that push the limits of human endurance. Many do not survive these assignments, crushed by machinery, poisoned by chemicals, or driven to despair by the relentless pace. Even those who endure are forever changed, their bodies scarred, their minds sharpened by necessity, their morals bent by survival. Amid this chaos, acts of resistance emerge, fragile and fleeting, yet immensely powerful in their symbolism. Some prisoners preserve fragments of forbidden knowledge, hidden texts, or spiritual teachings that serve as reminders of a world beyond the prison walls. These acts of intellectual or spiritual defiance are dangerous. Discovery can mean death, but they offer a flicker of identity in an environment that seeks to annihilate it. Others form bonds, small alliances that provide warmth, protection, or a shared meal. These connections are tenuous, easily broken by betrayal or enforced by power, yet they are vital. Even in the darkest conditions, the human need for connection persists, a faint signal of resilience against the crushing weight of oppression. Punishments are omnipresent, brutal, and often public. Guards wield instruments of pain with precision and indifference. Electro-bolters, shock devices, and mechanical restraints are used to extract obedience, demonstrate authority, or instill fear. Those accused of heresy or contact with the warp face more insidious methods: psychic amplifiers that invade the mind, isolation chambers that distort perception, and ritualistic punishments designed to strip away both body and soul. Time itself becomes fluid in these conditions. Days blend into nights, and weeks stretch endlessly, punctuated only by labor, punishment, and fleeting moments of reprieve. The mind adapts or fractures, and even the strongest can find themselves questioning reality, morality, and the very concept of self. Within the prison, knowledge is both survival tool and weapon. Observing patterns, reading guards, behaviors, and understanding the hidden rules of the social order can determine life or death. Some prisoners become experts at manipulation, spreading rumors, inciting violence among rivals, or feigning weakness to lure others into traps. Intelligence is a precious resource, often more valuable than food, medicine, or even weapons. The most cunning individuals exploit both human psychology and the Imperium's rigid systems of punishment to carve niches of relative safety. Yet even the cleverest must remain vigilant. Betrayal is constant, and the line between friend and enemy is invisible. Despite the ever-present fear, prisoners occasionally display courage, defiance, and ingenuity. Secret tunnels are discovered, hidden caches of food are shared, and forbidden rituals are performed in hidden chambers. These acts are rare and dangerous, but they are symbols of the human spirit's refusal to be fully subjugated. In whispered conversations, inmates tell stories of those who resisted, of secret escapes, of manipulations that allowed them to survive beyond what logic or strength would dictate. Even when these tales are partially myth, they serve to inspire, giving hope that life, however constrained, can still be navigated with intelligence and cunning. Physical suffering is matched only by psychological torment. Prisoners are subjected to continuous observation, manipulation, and intimidation. The warden's presence, whether real or rumored, casts a shadow over every interaction. Guards exploit fear, secrecy, and expectation to maintain control, often punishing before the crime is committed. The psychological calculus of prison life becomes more important than physical strength. A glance at the wrong person, a misplaced word, or even hesitation can result in punishment so severe it becomes legend. Yet those who survive these ordeals often emerge as masters of human psychology, capable of navigating the most treacherous interactions with skill and subtlety. Acts of rebellion, even minor ones, carry outsized risk. Attempts to escape are often met with mass executions, while violent uprisings are crushed with overwhelming force. Yet these stories circulate, whispered among prisoners as lessons in both caution and defiance. Even failed rebellions have value. They demonstrate courage, cunning, and the possibility, however fleeting, of resistance. Prisoners study these failures carefully, learning patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities to exploit in future survival strategies. The very knowledge of potential resistance becomes a tool, a subtle form of rebellion in a world designed to suppress hope entirely. Life in these prisons is relentless, but even within this unyielding structure, moments of humanity persist. Small acts of kindness, sharing food, offering protection, teaching a fellow prisoner a survival skill, become heroic gestures. They are fragile, fleeting, and dangerous, but they remind prisoners of a world beyond the iron and stone of their confinement. For a moment, they are not simply numbers, laborers, or objects of punishment. They are human beings, capable of thought, compassion, and strategy. These moments are precious, treasured, and preserved in memory, sustaining the spirit in an environment designed to extinguish it. The Imperium's prisons are ultimately arenas of survival, dominance, and human ingenuity. They are crucibles where the mind and body are tested beyond normal limits, where morality is fluid, and where the line between life and death is constantly negotiated. Every day is a struggle, every interaction a potential threat or opportunity, and every breath a defiance of the forces that seek to erase identity, hope, and individuality. The prisoner learns that the rules of the outside world no longer apply. Only cunning, adaptability, and a careful understanding of human psychology ensure survival. Even as despair surrounds every corner, prisoners continue to navigate these treacherous conditions. They adapt to scarcity, manipulate fear, and exploit the rigid systems of punishment to carve spaces of temporary reprieve. Each day is a test of endurance, intelligence, and cunning. The weak perish, the strong endure, and the cunning rise to positions of relative power, wielding influence over both guards and fellow inmates. Survival is a measure not of strength alone, but of the ability to balance cruelty with strategy, fear with opportunity, and vigilance with patience. In the end, life among the damned in the Imperium's prisons is a constant negotiation between hope and despair, survival and annihilation, loyalty and betrayal. It is a world where the mind must be sharper than the blade, where intelligence can equal strength, and where every action carries consequences that ripple through the fragile social order. The human spirit, battered and tested, endures through cunning, resilience, and the smallest acts of defiance. Even in the most oppressive conditions, prisoners find ways to assert identity, preserve knowledge, and maintain hope, however faint. In these prisons, existence itself is a victory, and survival is the ultimate act of rebellion against a universe designed to crush all who oppose it. Rebellion in the Imperium's prisons is a rare but inevitable phenomenon. The human instinct for freedom, defiance, or even simple self-preservation persists even in the most oppressive environments, and while the architects of these prisons anticipate subversion, they cannot entirely eliminate it. Within the massive iron-bound halls, whispers of revolt circulate like sparks in a dry, flammable forest. These whispers are dangerous, contagious, and deadly, yet they are a lifeline to those who refuse to surrender completely to despair. Plans are made in secrecy, communicated in subtle gestures, and often carried out by prisoners who have spent years observing the guards' routines, the weaknesses of the prison's infrastructure, and the behaviors of their fellow inmates. The complexity of coordination is staggering. One misstep can bring the full wrath of the warden, the chaplains, and the Inquisition down upon the conspirators with devastating efficiency. The rebellion, when it occurs, is swift, brutal, and usually doomed. The Imperium's prisons are designed to neutralize collective action through sheer force, surveillance, and a culture of fear. Guards act as extensions of the prison itself, coordinated with one another in near-perfect unison. Mechanical defenses, automated weapons, and psychic wards respond instantly to any sign of insurrection. Even when prisoners achieve temporary success, it is fleeting. Escape routes are booby-trapped. Reinforcements arrive faster than anticipated, and betrayal from within often ensures failure. The few who survive a revolt emerge as legends among inmates, their stories whispered in secret to inspire others. Yet these legends are bittersweet. The physical and psychological toll of rebellion is immense, and the price of failure is invariably death, mutilation, or permanent psychic torment. In these moments, the nature of power within the prison becomes starkly apparent. Authority is never absolute, yet it is enforced with a combination of terror and calculated manipulation. A single act of defiance can ripple through the prison, destabilizing hierarchies and revealing weaknesses that the most cunning can exploit. Gangs, hierarchies, and alliances are both fragile and dangerous. Shifting loyalties and strategic betrayals are the tools by which prisoners navigate the treacherous landscape. Even within these criminal societies, trust is fleeting, measured, and always conditional. The strongest rise, not merely through brute force, but by understanding the psychology of those around them and exploiting fear, desire, and desperation. Every interaction is a negotiation of survival, a careful balance of risk and reward. The guards, however, are equally sophisticated in their methods. They are trained to recognize patterns, anticipate rebellion, and manipulate prisoners into revealing secrets, often before any overt action is taken. The warden, an almost mythical figure among inmates, is said to preside over the prison's darkest cells with surgical precision. His punishments are legendary, ranging from physical mutilation to psychological torture that can linger long after the act itself. Those who survive an encounter with him are forever altered, physically marked and mentally scarred, yet they also gain a terrifying reputation that affords them limited protection in a world where fear is currency. Stories of the warden circulate constantly, both as warnings and as lessons in strategy, illustrating the complex interplay of control, intimidation, and survival that defines life within the prison. Punishment escalates rapidly in response to rebellion. Those caught are subjected to public executions, ritualistic torture, or forced labor in hazardous environments. The Imperium uses these events as both deterrent and spectacle, demonstrating the futility of resistance to the entire inmate population. Chemical agents, psychic amplifiers, and mechanical restraints are deployed with ruthless efficiency. Isolation chambers designed to distort perception and break mental resilience are frequently used against those who show signs of leadership or cunning. Even failure in minor tasks can result in harsh consequences, reinforcing the omnipresent reality that nothing within the prison is left to chance, and no act of defiance is tolerated. For the prisoners, rebellion is a high-stakes gamble. Success is temporary, failure is catastrophic, and survival often depends on an intricate understanding of human behavior, prison mechanics, and the constant monitoring of both allies and enemies. Many attempt minor acts of subversion, stealing rations, sabotaging equipment, or spreading misinformation among rival factions, but these small gestures can trigger disproportionate consequences. The psychological game becomes as important as physical prowess, the ability to anticipate reactions, manipulate perceptions, and exploit fear is often the difference between life and death. Prisoners learn to observe everything, trust nothing completely, and maintain a constant awareness of both visible and invisible threats. Despite the omnipresent danger, some prisoners achieve fleeting victories. They may manipulate guards, exploit weaknesses in infrastructure, or form secret alliances that temporarily tip the balance of power. These victories are celebrated quietly, often in whispered conversation or hidden messages, for public acknowledgement would invite immediate reprisal. Even small successes provide vital psychological reinforcement, allowing prisoners to maintain a sense of agency and purpose in an environment designed to suppress individuality. The ability to act, however subtly, is itself a form of rebellion, a defiance of the Imperium's intent to reduce humans to obedient cogs in its unyielding machinery. The Imperium's response to rebellion is both calculated and excessive. Punishments are carefully orchestrated to serve as warnings, deterring future acts of defiance while reinforcing the absolute authority of the prison system. Physical torture, psychological manipulation, and public spectacle converge to create an atmosphere where fear permeates every action. Those who survive these punishments gain a grim reputation that can offer limited protection, yet they are also forever marked by the trauma endured. The prison becomes not merely a place of confinement, but a theater of power, control, and survival, where every act, observed or concealed, contributes to the larger struggle between authority and resistance. Power within the prison is transient. Gangs rise and fall, alliances fracture, and the most cunning may ascend only to be brought down by circumstance or betrayal. Leadership is a precarious position. Authority is constantly challenged by rival factions, surveillance, and the unpredictable consequences of rebellion. Even the strongest individuals are vulnerable to manipulation, punishment, and the relentless psychological pressure exerted by guards and the warden. In this environment, survival is not guaranteed by strength alone. It requires intelligence, adaptability, and an unerring ability to read human behavior. Every action is a calculation, every decision a potential pivot between life and death, success and failure, dominance and submission. Amid this chaos, prisoners occasionally form moments of solidarity. Acts of shared labor, protection, or resource distribution provide fleeting relief and foster trust. Though such bonds are fragile and constantly tested by the environment's pressures, these alliances are often strategic, combining self-interest with mutual necessity, and they can be the difference between survival and death. Even when forged under duress, they offer psychological sustenance, a reminder that the human spirit can endure and adapt even in the face of extreme oppression. In the most harrowing cases, rebellion leads to profound transformation. Prisoners who survive uprisings often emerge as masters of manipulation, strategy, and psychological warfare. Their experiences hone instincts, sharpen judgment, and instill an acute awareness of both threats and opportunities. These survivors become formidable figures within the prison hierarchy, feared by peers and guards alike. Yet the cost is immense: physical injury, psychological trauma, and permanent scars, visible and invisible, serve as a constant reminder of the stakes involved. Their very survival is both a testament to resilience and a warning to those who would challenge authority without equal cunning. Even the act of enduring without rebellion carries its own perverse form of heroism. Prisoners who navigate the treacherous social structures, labor assignments, and punishments with intelligence and caution achieve survival in an environment designed to crush the spirit. They learn patience, observation, and subtle manipulation, maintaining agency within the oppressive constraints imposed by the Imperium. In a world where every action carries potential fatal consequences, survival itself is a measure of skill, endurance, and mental fortitude. In these prisons, life and death exist in a constant, precarious balance. Every day is a negotiation of power, fear, and resource management. Prisoners observe, learn, and adapt, exploiting weaknesses wherever they appear. The line between rebellion and submission is never fixed. It shifts constantly, dependent on circumstances, alliances, and the ever-present scrutiny of authority. Even the smallest acts of defiance, intelligence, or solidarity are magnified in significance, serving as both survival tools and acts of subtle resistance against the Imperium's oppressive machinery. Ultimately, the prisons are crucibles where the human spirit is tested to its limits. The physical, psychological, and social pressures create an environment where only the cunning, adaptable, and resilient survive. Rebellion, whether minor or catastrophic, is both a threat and a necessity, offering moments of agency in a world dominated by fear and control. Survival depends on understanding the complex interplay of power, psychology, and circumstance, as well as the ability to anticipate, manipulate, and endure. Within these walls, prisoners navigate a world defined by brutality, strategy, and the relentless assertion of authority, discovering that resistance, intelligence, and cunning are as critical to survival as physical strength or endurance. Life in these prisons is a testament to the Grimdark reality of the Imperium, a universe where cruelty is law, rebellion is fleeting, and survival is the only measure of success. Those who endure are forever changed, hardened by experience, sharpened by adversity, and marked by both physical scars and the deep psychological imprint of life among the damned. Every act of cunning, every survival instinct, every subtle defiance becomes a story, a lesson, and a means to navigate a system designed to annihilate both body and soul. Even in failure, even in suffering, the prisoners persist, driven by instinct, intelligence, and the faint flicker of hope that they may yet see another day. However dark, oppressive, and terrifying it may be, few prisoners ever leave the Imperium's prisons alive, and those who do emerge are rarely the same as when they entered. Survival comes at a cost far greater than most can comprehend, and even those who endure carry physical scars, mental trauma, and a soul shaped by endless cruelty. For the vast majority, death is the ultimate escape, whether it comes quietly in the isolation of a cell, violently at the hands of guards, or ceremoniously in public spectacle meant to terrify others. Life itself becomes a precarious balance, measured not in years, but in moments of avoidance, cunning, and calculated obedience. The few who survive the crucible of imprisonment are changed utterly, transformed into creatures of resilience, cunning, and indomitable instinct, capable of navigating the cruelest environments with a subtle mastery that borders on inhuman. The Imperium does not seek rehabilitation. It seeks obedience and utility. Prisons are designed as warning systems, demonstrating to the galaxy that heresy, rebellion, and failure will be met with relentless punishment. Even those who survive are shaped by fear, forced into submission to a system that tolerates no weakness. Redemption, where offered, is rarely true. It is labor, service, or combat, often under the most extreme conditions, and always measured in human suffering. A prisoner who redeems themselves is still a pawn, marked by the scars of experience and the psychological imprint of every horror endured. Survival itself becomes a moral compromise, a form of rebellion against death, but also a surrender to cruelty. Those who endure walk a line between humanity and the inhuman, forever balancing survival against the erosion of identity, ethics, and hope. Death in these prisons is both random and ritualistic. Some die from accidents in mines, factories, or labor pits, crushed under machinery or suffocated in toxic atmospheres. Others are punished for perceived infractions, subjected to methods of torture so precise, so cruel, that the act itself becomes legend among prisoners. Psychic torment, chemical agents, and mechanical restraints combine to create suffering designed to leave lasting impressions, physical, mental, and spiritual. Public executions serve as both punishment and cautionary tale, demonstrating to the living that the machinery of the Imperium tolerates nothing less than absolute obedience. Funerals are rare, memorials rarer still. Bodies are often fed to machines, incinerated, or used to construct a spectacle of warning. Life itself, in these conditions, becomes an exercise in endurance, strategy, and cunning. Those who survive do so not because they are morally superior or physically stronger, but because they have mastered the environment. Every glance, every whisper, every movement is evaluated, calculated, and adapted to navigate the complex hierarchy of fear, power, and influence. Prisoners learn to anticipate the whims of guards, the manipulations of rival inmates, and the unpredictable interventions of the warden, chaplains, and inquisition. Intelligence, cunning, and psychological acuity become as critical as strength or endurance. The ability to deceive, manipulate, and survive without drawing undue attention is often the difference between life and death. In these prisons, the concept of hope is dangerous but essential. Even a faint flicker of hope can inspire action, forge alliances, or sustain the mind under conditions designed to crush it. Prisoners preserve knowledge, secret texts, and cultural fragments, maintaining a connection to a world beyond the oppressive walls. These acts, though small, are significant. They are rebellions of the mind, assertions of identity, and methods of maintaining sanity. Acts of compassion, shared resources, and clandestine teaching occur, though they are fraught with risk. Trust, even in the smallest degree, is precious and dangerous. The prisoners understand that survival requires balanced use of intelligence, the careful measurement of fear and loyalty, and the ability to seize opportunity without overexposure. Punishments continue to shape the landscape of survival. The warden's presence, whether real or legendary, looms over every corner, every interaction, and every decision. Rumors of his methods, surgical, cruel, and unpredictable, serve to maintain absolute control. Even in his absence, the psychological pressure he exerts defines behavior, ensuring that prisoners constantly evaluate every action against the unseen threat of ultimate punishment. Guards act as extensions of this fear, executing orders with precision and cruelty, ensuring that any challenge to authority is met swiftly and efficiently. The system is flawless in its design, a feedback loop of terror that strengthens obedience while simultaneously testing the limits of endurance, cunning, and human resilience. For the prisoners who survive, rebellion becomes both a cautionary tale and a strategic tool. Minor acts of subversion, sabotaging equipment, spreading misinformation, or manipulating alliances can yield temporary advantages, but they carry immense risk. Full-scale uprisings are rare and almost invariably crushed, yet even failure leaves lessons, knowledge, and experience that survivors carry forward. The skills learned in these crucibles, psychological manipulation, observation, strategic thinking, become vital for navigating not only the prison environment, but the broader Imperium itself. Survival is mastery, a testament to intelligence, cunning, and adaptability, forged in conditions designed to eradicate all but the most resourceful. The social structure among prisoners is both fragile and essential. Alliances are formed for protection, access to resources, and the mitigation of risk. Trust is provisional, carefully measured, and often temporary. Betrayal is inevitable, yet even betrayal can be a strategic move, a calculated effort to ensure survival in a world where morality is subordinate to pragmatism. Knowledge, observation, and careful calculation are more valuable than physical strength. The ability to read situations, anticipate reactions, and manipulate circumstances defines the successful prisoner. The harshness of the environment creates a hierarchy where intelligence, cunning, and adaptability determine survival. Labor continues to shape prisoners' experience. Mines, factories, and construction projects push the human body beyond its limits, ensuring that physical endurance is a prerequisite for survival. Every day is a trial, every task a test of resilience and fortitude. Failure is punished, sometimes lethally, while success guarantees little beyond temporary reprieve. The prisoners' bodies bear the scars of these tasks, lacerations, burns, contusions, and the marks of restraint devices. Their minds, however, endure the greater trial, constantly evaluating threats, opportunities, and the dynamics of power within the prison. Physical suffering is only part of the ordeal. The relentless psychological pressure, fear, and anticipation of danger define the totality of experience. Even amidst despair, prisoners find small victories. Knowledge of hidden passages, secret caches, or alliances can provide moments of control. Small acts of rebellion, such as preserving a fragment of forbidden knowledge or subtly influencing the outcome of social dynamics, are acts of defiance against the Imperium's intent. These acts sustain identity, preserve sanity, and maintain a semblance of autonomy. The human spirit, even battered and tested, finds ways to assert itself, demonstrating resilience in the face of overwhelming oppression. The ultimate lesson of these prisons is stark survival is the only measure of success. Morality, ethics, and idealism have no place here. Only cunning, observation, adaptability, and the willingness to exploit every opportunity ensure continued existence. Those who endure become masters of manipulation, strategy, and psychological resilience.